Hey everyone, this is Lucas and welcome to Vlog Waves. Today I delve into the realm of erotic mystery and review The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torre. Now, this is a book that I first heard about when I was watching a video by Lily C. Reeds. I'll put a link to her channel in the description. But I was first inspired because I love how she does her YouTube videos, and so when she was kind of talking about the book and what it entailed, I honestly felt drawn to it. And aside from that, I just love mystery, I love suspense, I love thrillers, and specifically I love contemporary thrillers and contemporary mysteries. I still do get a kick out of the classic Sherlock Holmes stuff or the stuff that's in the 1800s or the 1920s or what have you, but I really like contemporary stuff. That's why I liked the Dexter novel, and that's half the reason why I picked this up, honestly. And straight off the bat, I mean, if anybody's looking for trigger warnings for this book, I have to say that there is not a single trigger warning I can give that will cover all the bases for Girl in 6E, because it is an erotica novel and it also tackles a lot of violent events. So it is extremely explicit both in the sexual way and the violent way. So just go, if you're not into that sort of thing, like if you don't have a good stomach for that sort of thing, just give this book a pass. But if you are, the one main trigger warning I would give, like more than any other, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the one main trigger warning I would give is if you have a high sensitivity to abuse regarding children, like childhood neglect in that regard, then I would say you might not want to read this, or you might want to be careful with it. That's the one thing that kind of sticks out to me. That being said, what is this book about? Well, this book is about a girl named Deanna Madden. Now, she is a cam girl who has cyber sex with online clients for money. And she is one of the top cam girls on the website she goes to. She makes a lot of money from this. And she's an interesting person. She's an interesting person because she holds herself up in her apartment due to her intense homicidal psychopathic urges. So she constantly has fantasies about, different ways she would kill people or different things she would do. In fact, there's a scene in specific that I thought was particularly funny where she talks about how she would gut the mailman and how she would kind of enjoy the blood spilling on the floor or the pain or whatever. And so she'll have these very intense urges to kill people. So the way she kind of deals with it and kind of functions in society is she locks herself in her own apartment, and she puts barriers and boundaries on herself so that she isn't able to actually enact her fantasies in that way. She's very sexually charged and very violently charged, and those two intersect a lot in the story. But going back to how she holds herself up, she at night, because she feels like she's not safe to herself, like she feels like she'll go out of control at night, she actually has someone else outside, someone who's addicted to painkillers. She has that person lock her up with keys that she has no spare of in exchange for giving him painkiller meds, essentially. So he's a junkie, he gets painkiller meds from her, and in exchange she says he has to lock her up. And then fair enough. And then when the day comes around, he unlocks her again, and business is as usual. A mild spoiler, but something that is connected to this, is that she keeps her door unlocked during the day. And she does this because she feels like if someone enters her house, that's a home invasion. So in her own twisted way, she leaves it open during the day so that when she's conscious, if someone comes in, she could always use the excuse, well, I was just defending myself, and kill whoever walked into her house. So it's pretty crafty, it's pretty sneaky. So basically, since she puts herself in the situation where she holds herself up in her house and she essentially does live streams of webcams and, online sex every single day, she has more than enough money for anything, and all of her needs are brought straight to her door. Figure like I think they reference specifically Amazon Prime in the book, because she gets her food delivered to her house, she gets any clothes she needs, anything she needs for her webcams, she needs just you name it, she gets it all to her front door. And she doesn't even answer the door. When anybody has something that they drop off, she doesn't even open the door when they drop it off. That's how intense her urges are. And so she has them even forge her signature if they need her signature for it. And she, like, if they offer resistance, she's like, I'm not opening the door. I'm just not. So sign it however you need to sign it. And she waits, literally, until they give up. And then once she hears the elevator to her 6th floor go down, that's when she quickly opens her door, grabs whatever her parcel is, and then closes her door. And that had served her well for many years. Until the spoilery parts happened in this book. And you guys will see just how those play out. But it's actually quite interesting, to say the least. So it has to do with, obviously, with how her clients on her webcamming service interact with her. She's like the 3rd most popular cam girl in the world, and so she gets a lot of money, and obviously nothing to do with that money. But this obviously gives her a lot of exposure. And so that's kind of how the plot kicks off, and how new and novel things start happening around Deanna. Her online alias, at least one of them that she uses, is Jessica Riley. So she knows, like, if she gets a present from a client, it's usually addressed to Jessica Riley, because she doesn't give out her name. And so, yeah, it's very interesting, because you get to see this through the perspective not only of a cam girl, but of somebody who's exploring different fetishes and different ways of expressing sexuality, and different types of people you deal with on these websites. It's funny because, like, she gets everything delivered to her house, but she also gets psychological advice and legal advice through online services, through, like, in exchange for online sexual favors or in exchange for money. So she never has to leave the house for that either. So she's constantly kind of throwing things and bouncing things off of lawyers and psychologists, and how she would handle specific situations if they came up, and kind of like what her homicidal tendencies mean. I believe in the book she has 2 psychologists. One she pays with the sexual favors, and one she doesn't. I believe she had one psychologist specifically and made sure he was gay, so that she could have like some sort of all-on-the-table conversation with him and know that he wouldn't get anything out of it. Talk about her job, talk about her clients, talk about how she's feeling and all of that, and he wouldn't get any, sort of attachment to her, essentially. And then she had one that she didn't have that too. And one thing I found was interesting was that even though she locks herself up, she still wishes she was normal, She has that sort of emotion, that emotional battle playing with her homicidal side. She buys dresses even though she can't wear them. She knows she can't go outside and wear them. She buys items that she would use had she had a normal life, or if she had like a normal boyfriend or a normal husband, etc., etc. And she just kind of puts them in a different room, because she has some sort of like separation, a dichotomy between her camming side of the room and her like living side of the room, if that makes any sense. And it's kind of sad in a way, the way it's written, how she kind of reflects on the days she's lost and what she would do if she was normal, not having to be on heavy doses of antipsychotic medication just to function like a normal human being. Because she does have the option of taking antipsychotics, but they dull her senses so much and they dull her intelligence so much that she would rather just not take them and be locked up. So I think that's a very intense, very gripping aspect of her character. And so it's just very interesting going through it, because through it, there's never a dull moment. I think it's a really fast page turner. Once I got halfway through it, it was very, very easy to get through the remaining half. I think that once I hit the halfway point, it like sped up tremendously, and I ended up finishing it in a couple days. So It's a very intense book, very thrilling book, very explicit both graphically and sexually, like I said. It actually surprised me because it was more explicit than the Dexter novel. And the only book I can think of off cuff that rivals it is American Psycho. I haven't read all of American Psycho, but what I've read from it, that level of explicit description is the only thing that kind of comes close to this. And so if that kind of gives you an idea of what sort of material is in the book, and it's not, like I said, there's never a dull moment. It's like there's always something happening, be it like sexual or violent or character development. It's just kind of like a roller coaster that keeps going and going. And I think that A.R. Torre does a great job of explaining the urges both through the lens of Deanna, who you actually want to root for, and through other people, I'm not going to spoil anything, who you don't want to root for. And drawing the parallel to Dexter, I think that there are definitely some ways in which they get the audience to sympathize with the killer. Deanna isn't quite as much of an avenging angel as Dexter is. However, one of the ways they get you to empathize with Deanna is that both Dexter and Deanna have a soft spot for children. And so, that kind of just hits you here, and it's like, okay, I don't approve of what they are, but I empathize with them, And I think that there are parallels definitely with a lot of the ways they get you to empathize with the main killers. And I would say this book is really great. It's really suspenseful. And it's actually pretty, thought-provoking, because it gets you... the person who wrote this, A.R. Torre, she did a lot of research about the webcam culture and how a lot of these women who did these webcams were confident and intelligent, and it kind of was empowering for her in a way. And so you actually get it's quite educational, if you get my drift, because it goes through a lot of different fetishes and different ways that people think about sex. And so it's a very interesting rabbit hole to go down in that regard. So if that sounds like your kind of deal, then I would say definitely check this out. On Goodreads, I think I gave it a 4 or a 4.5, but you can't give 0.5 on Goodreads, but it's a really good book for what it does. And if you're okay with the explicit material, you're definitely going to get a lot of value out of it. And I'm not sure if I'm going to read the sequel, but if anybody's concerned about trilogies or books that don't end, I think this is part of a trilogy. I think there are 2 more books on this with her. I don't know if I'm going to read them, like I said, but so there's definitely more than enough to sink your teeth into. And one thing I want to say before I go is that on the topic of the sexual side of things, the description for the book on Goodreads does not do it justice, because it says it's like 50 Shades of Grey, and I'm sorry, but 50 Shades of Grey is not good. And it's also not a good representation, or a healthy representation, in my opinion, of the lifestyle that it's trying to portray. Whereas in 6E, at least to what I know, the writer tried her best to research each individual paradigm, if you will, she was talking about. Each aspect of webcamming and fetishes and ways people go about them. So I think it's a disservice to this book to compare it to 50 Shades of Grey. It's not like, ooh, it's a murdering version of 50 Shades of Grey. Not like that at all. It's its own thing. It is very sexy, yes, and it is very much based on the erotic elements. But it is in its own identity, and it handles the topics a lot more maturely, I think. But with all that being said, I would say I've rambled on enough. Go check this book out. It's well worth the money. There's no dull moment in the book at all, at least in my opinion. And yeah, you're going to definitely get some good value out of it. I know I did. So yeah, this is Lucas, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.